Welcome to Conversations with America. I'm Father Sam Sawyer, Executive Editor at America Media. Today on Skype, we're talking to Father Arturo Sosa, the Superior General of the Society of Jesus. Father Sosa is joining us from Toronto as he makes his first visit to Canada since his election as Superior General. Father General, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for this time.
We're very glad to be able to talk to you. I had a couple of questions that we wanted to ask you, and I wanted to start with a theme that you've been emphasizing since your election, the theme of discernment in common. So the last time we spoke with you, you interviewed with Father Matt Malone, our editor-in-chief, and you discussed apostolic planning as one of the challenges facing the Society of Jesus. And last fall, you wrote a letter asking Jesuits and our partners in mission to recommit to discernment in common, a spiritual practice that you describe as a precondition for apostolic planning. So I'm wondering if you could share with us some examples of how that discernment has been happening and how it's helping you plan and guide the society for the future.
Well, first of all, I want to underline the connection between discernment and apostolic planning. Discernment in common and apostolic planning. If we only discern, we can just be dreamers, no? Wishful thinking. We need to put in practice what the discernment show us to do, and that's apostolic planning. If we only do apostolic planning, we only are managers without spirit, without soul. So this is a combination that is needed. Discernment in common and apostolic planning. As you know well, the Society of Jesus in this moment is in a big, very big and very exciting process of discernment in common about the universal apostolic preferences. After the general congregation that give us a mission and give a very huge horizon, about reconciliation in the three dimensions emphasized by the congregation, the reconciliation among us, among the human beings, reconciliation with the creation, with our common house, and reconciliation with God. We need to put that in practice in the next 10 years in some way.
Yes.
And now all the body of the society is trying to receive from the Spirit the guide to do this in the next years, and that's what we call the universal apostolic preferences. The universal apostolic preferences are not a choice about what we want to do. It's a choice about how we want to do what we want to do in these next years. So this process is now in the middle of the process. All the provinces, all the communities, all the apostolic works are participating in this new process with a very participation on Jesuits and lay partners, and we will conclude the process in January with the General Council and also in consultation with the Holy Father, because we received the mission from the Church. So the result, the product of this apostolic discernment in common will be put in the hands of the Holy Father so he can give us the mission for the society in the next 10 years.
Could you say something perhaps about what it's been like to work with Pope Francis, a fellow Jesuit, but also what he expects from the society, what he looks for the Jesuits to be doing in the Church?
Well, we are very inspired by Pope Francis because his way of communicating is very of our way of communicating the gospel. No, his language is a language he learned in the exercises and the Ignatian Spirituality. So we talk the same language, but also is a fellow Jesuit, but is the Pope in this moment for us. Pope Francis is our head, is the Vicar of Christ in the Ignatian language. So we are trying to help him in his task of oriented the church, and the relationship is very, very close to him, and he knows he can count on the Society of Jesus, and the Society of Jesus is willing to serve the church. That is the sense of our vocation.
As we were talking about both discernment and apostolic planning, the need for both of those, I know you've been meeting over the course of the last few days with the provincials from the Jesuits in Canada and the United States. So I'm wondering if you might say a few words about what you see as the needs, the challenges, the opportunities for the Jesuits, particularly in North America.
Well, North America, as you know, is a very complex society. In the United States and Canada, I think is a very big challenge for us in this moment is how to be witness of the gospel, to be the presence of the gospels for the young people, for the youth, in a secularized society. Even in the States, even in Canada, we have a new generation of young people that is not in the old tradition of Christianity, and they are looking for what means for this society, for the future, for the present, and for the future, for the life, the good news of the gospel. So this is a very good challenge. Another challenge, very important in this society, a North American society, is the integration of cultures. United States and Canada in this moment are multicultural societies, and I think if we follow Jesus, if we follow the message of the gospel, and we want to be really collaborators of a new history, we need to integrate cultures, to be an intercultural society, not only a multicultural society.
Right, and not only multi, but between, relating to each other.
Not only multi, but inter, so we can enrich each other from the different diversity of cultures. No? And that has a very important fundament in our theology. No? The face of God is multicultural. The face of God is intercultural. It's not only one face. The face of God is the whole humanity, the mankind. It shows how is God.
Right. We have to see God in everyone, and not just in one at a time, but in everyone together and at the same time.
Yes, that's the point. So we can, the revelation of God is through this diversity, these different cultures, and the integration of them in one is the reconciliation of all things in Christ.
On that theme of reconciliation, Father General, one question we wanted to ask you specifically was about the work that the Jesuits are doing in situations of conflict and crisis. So we've been following the terrible news from Nicaragua. We heard, just a few days ago, there were shots fired outside the Jesuit University in Managua there. And we know that both the Jesuits at the university and Padre Melo have been working for reconciliation in Nicaragua. We also know that you're from Venezuela, and we've been following the news of the crisis in Venezuela. I wonder if you could speak to us about what role you see the Jesuits and the Church playing in working for reconciliation in these situations of social and political upheaval.
Well, I think that our work in the first place is to be with the people, to be close to the people, and that is the case of the Venezuelan Jesuits, is the case of the Central American Jesuits, that they are very close to the people and with the sufferings of the people, and sharing the ordinary life of the people. And from there, from the ordinary life of the people, for the suffering of the people, we are trying to put in touch the whole society and looking for a new way of living in justice and peace. And this is also for a great message I have received here in Canada, the reconciliation with the First Nations, with the indigenous.
Yes.
We held 2 days ago in Regina a nice gathering of people from the United States and Canada, Jesuits and indigenous people that are trying to create that bridge between a tradition, a history, the presence of the indigenous people in this society, and the reconciliation as a way to a new future where everyone has an important side. And in all the countries where we are working, we find this situation of big wounds, polarization, persecution in Latin America, in Africa, in Syria, in India, and we are trying to be part of the process that many people is pushing of really contribute with the social justice and peace that is a way to be reconciled also with God.
Right. And it starts with being present, being really embedded and sharing the life of the people, which is also something that Pope Francis has called us to over and over again.
Yes, Pope Francis has repeating that every day because he reads the gospel. No, that's the message of the gospel, the incarnation. So Jesus, the Trinity in the classic meditation of St. Ignatius decided to get part of this humanity, and Jesus incarnate himself poor among the poor in a very small country, in a very small, in a very poor family, and that's the way he shows us to rebuild the human relations from the core of humanity.
I'd like to also pick up a theme that you mentioned earlier, the theme of accompaniment of youth. And I know that right now we're in the middle of a Jubilee year of St. Aloysius, one of the young saints of the Society of Jesus, in preparation for the upcoming synod, the Synod of Bishops that will focus on youth and vocation and young people. What I'd like to ask is, as the Church prepares for the synod coming up this autumn, what do you see as the most important ways that the Jesuits, that we can both learn from and minister to young people in today's world?
There are many ways, no? But the essential way is to be coherent with our vocation. We can only be in touch with the young people if we are living what we say we live. And that coherence is very important to us to approach people. Young people has a very special sensitivity about that. You cannot say one thing and do another thing. You have to be really coherent in what you say. And this is the witness of Jesus in his life. He was coherent with his word. So this is the first thing, to be authentic, to be what we are. If we say we live from faith, live from faith. If we say we live close to the poor, let's do it. If we want to be really in a style of life that is in according with the equilibrium of the environment, we have to do it. So it's the first message is for ourselves, just to deep our coherence of life, and then we can approach, because now we don't know what the future will be, but also they don't know which future they will have. So we have together to be prepared to the changes that we cannot now imagine. And if we will prepare in the sense of being really human, to make a kind of relationship that can better live in any situation as human beings.
So certainly one of the calls, as you've said, that young people make on us is the call to live our own lives more authentically, more coherently. As the Church tries to learn how to reach out to young people, maybe especially to young people who have grown up without a religious tradition or who don't see themselves as Christian or as part of a church anymore, are there any special ways that you think the society, the Jesuits, are called to reach out to those young people who we call, at least in English, the nones, N-O-N-E-S, those without any religious affiliation?
Pope Francis has said very clear and very loud what is the way, discernment. I think the Christian life, the real Christian life, comes out from experience of God and an election. So what we have to give to the young people is the opportunity to make an election in their life, to make an election in the sense of the discernment, an election that comes from the experience of themselves and the experience of God that you can find in that experience. So if we are able to show the young people how to get in touch with their interiority, and with God in their interiority, and with God in the struggle for a new relationship among men and women, that will be the first step for a discernment, and they can elect to do a life that is in the sense of the following Jesus.
Right. So recognizing that the desire is already there, and then helping people to discern and to make the election, moving out of that desire that they already share.
Just our desires. When you are in that age, you decide everything. You decide to be really a big person, a person that can really collaborate with the others, that can have a new word. That the desires is in the essential of the youth.
Father General, if I can turn to a different question. This one's particularly close to us as we work here at a Jesuit media ministry. So I'd like to ask you what you see as you've traveled around the world, as you've listened to Jesuits and people working with Jesuits around the world. What do you see as some of the best examples of Jesuits engaging in the culture of encounter and the culture of dialogue that Pope Francis has called the Church to?
The Jesuits, in this moment of our history, is a body that have been seen in so many cultures. So we have Jesuits that they are born in many different cultures, and I think every Jesuit is doing this process of inculturate themselves in their own cultures first, with a critical vision of their own cultures, and to learn to be in touch with other cultures, because we also, as a universal body, put that tension in our life, the life between our born culture, where we born, and to have the possibility of being in touch and being enriched by other cultures and to enrich others. So there is very difficult to say a synthesis, because in every country, in every nation where the Jesuits are, they are doing the same effort, and has an original way of doing the things. So that's what is very exciting for me, to how I find Jesuits being really Jesuits everywhere, and also be really persons of their own context, able to get in touch with their people, and also having the mission, the tension with a universal vision.
I wonder if we can ask you also a few questions about getting to know you better as a person and as a Jesuit. So one thing we'd like to ask you is, how do you pray generally? What's your favorite way to pray, or how do you approach listening to God through the day?
Well, normally I used to pray in the morning, very early in the morning, because if not, the day will take the energies and the time and the attention. So the first thing I do in the morning is having as long as possible time for being with God. Normally, I used to pray reading the Gospel of the day, of the liturgy of the day. For me, the Gospel is the principal font of inspiration for the prayer. And I have in my heart, in my mind, all the time so many situations of the society of Jesus and of the countries we are working on, and that's part of my prayer. And I'm very aware that what the Constitution of the Society of Jesus said about the general, said you don't have to pray so the grace comes to all over the body of the society through him. So I try to do that. I try to be really in touch with God, so God can give grace to the whole society, so the partners in our mission, and so the people we serve in all over the world.
Well, thank you, I think is probably the appropriate response to that. We say that Ignatian spirituality, so always begins in gratitude. And it sounds like that's something that you embody as well. As we wrap up, are there any particular insights from Ignatian spirituality? You mentioned earlier the meditation with the Trinity looking down at the world and deciding to enter in. I wonder if there are any parts of Ignatian spirituality that as you look at the world today, beyond that meditation on the Trinity, sort of are particularly meaningful for you or challenge you in a new way to look at the world?
Well, in the Ignatian spirituality, I think an essential point is what he called the examen, to that beginning with the recognition of what we receive from God every day, and to thank for that, to be aware, to be aware of yourself, to be aware what is happening around you. So that's for me a very important point. Another point that is not always underlined is the importance for St. Ignatius of the Eucharistic. If all Jesuits can remember how St. Ignatius wrote the constitution of the society in the Eucharistic and his diary.
It was part of his
diary. Yeah. So the Eucharistic is the principal sign of the discernment in common. We together, because the Eucharistic put us in touch with not only with the society and the church, with the humanity and with God. So the communion there, the idea of the communion, and we are together doing what God is willing to do with our history. So the celebration of the Eucharistic is also a very important moment in my spiritual life, and I think in the spirituality of St. Ignatius. And then I think St. Ignatius guides us in a very practical ways. He says, if you want to be put with Jesus, go to Mary, yep. Go to the mother, and the mother will guide you to the Son. And well, that's another very important. In my young life, I was from the Congregación Mariana, now CLC. So, and also I learned from my parents and my grandfathers and grandmothers this devotion to the Mother of God, to the Mother of Jesus, and the way she can help us to reach Jesus and to support us and to accompany us in the way of following him. So this is another point of the very interesting of the spirituality of Ignatius. So go to him and ask her to put in touch you with Jesus, and so you can reach also the Father and be guided by the Spirit. So I think it's a Trinitarian spirituality that goes through the Mother of God and help us to live very close to the gospel and to the Jesus way of life.
Well, thank you for letting us know a little bit more about your own spiritual life, your own way of prayer, and please be assured that we will continue to pray for you and with you here from America, and I'm sure from our viewers and our readers throughout the world. So, Father General, I want to thank you for joining us for this conversation with America. And for more information on how you can be part of the conversation, please visit us at www.americamagazine.org. Thank you.